今天您将收看的是
百年艺术风范，对话古今传奇。今晚让我们穿梭岁月，踏上时尚探索之旅。
大家好，观众朋友们，您现在看到的是今晚我们品画。2019年12月，对话浪凡130年艺术展在上海复兴艺术中心开幕。在今天的节目当中呢，我们就请到了这次展览的策展人 Judy Clark 和我们来聊聊这个展览的特点和亮点。
2019年岁末，上海复兴艺术中心为中国观众精彩呈现展览《对话浪凡130年》。展览中陈列有70余件古董服饰、全新绣款和刺绣珍品等，全景展现130年来的时尚潮流以及品牌魅力对世界时尚的深远影响。
I think it's wonderful to be working in a space that has been set up as an art gallery, as an art foundation, because I think it poses some of the conceptual questions. What are you doing? We're not entering into a museum of applied arts, for example, where we know that the visitors always expect something of a traditional history. Here, your visitors, I think, expect a conceptual take on this exhibition, and it's an opportunity to think all the time of how to present fashion in new ways, how to create these installations so that it can happily sit next to an exhibition of Cindy Sherman or Yayoi Kusama. You know, that it's something that that as an exhibition itself and its own conceptual demands is at the level that is required in a venue like this. I think every time I start a new project, in a way it's a similar methodology, as in I immerse myself in the material, but I start anywhere. It doesn't matter where I start, and I start to go through the archive or the objects available with my sketchbook, and I note down themes, returns, things that seem to come back and back as important themes through the material. So for example, with the Lanvin 130th anniversary exhibition which we're celebrating, for me it was important to find resonances between the work of Bruno Cialelli and Jean Lanvin. So it was like entering into the Jean Lanvin archive with his eyes, or looking at it through the eyes of his collection, the codes that he's decided to bring out, and then expanding from there. So to not create a kind of linear message, but one that becomes more holistic. So work on the side, look at Jean Lanvin's references, Bruno Cialelli's other loves that might have informed those decisions. So it's a work of love, but a work of full immersion.
展览以精心选择的多元主题和在中国首次展出的珍贵藏品，生动再现了时尚传奇演变中闪耀的历史瞬间，从多角度解码锐意创新的时尚触觉。
Well, I think the inspiration comes from the material. It's very difficult to look at a Lanvin archive and not fall in love with the pieces. Jean Lanvin's archive is one of the most important archives in the world. If you're interested in dress history, there are also pieces that you're familiar with from our history books. You know, the things that we learn about are in the exhibition dialogues. But I think it was also important to give it some fun, to give it a contemporary spirit, and to look at not only which garments Bruno particularly looked at in the archive, but associated shapes to kind of enliven the story.
穿越浅色帷幕，打开时间与空间的隔阂，观众仿佛可以亲身触摸到百年时尚传奇。代表母女情感纽带的蝴蝶结， 凝聚童年主题的童装，一一为观众展现了让那浪凡创建品牌的原动力。标志性颜色与流行至今的礼服装饰性翅膀，则延续了可以追溯至欧洲中世纪与文艺复兴时期的美学基因。
The exhibition is laid out thematically. So I had the great privilege of attending Bruno Cialelli's first catwalk show. And there were themes I'd already started researching the Lanvin archive. And so themes came to mind that resonated with different moments. So I thought Bruno loves galleries, he loves installation art, and so I thought this could be a series of installations that appear as homages to different moments within the Lanvin history. I visited the Fosun Foundation, which is a wonderful venue and building with two dramatic spaces. One huge gallery space and one smaller gallery space upstairs, and I thought how wonderful it would be to create the whole exhibition as a dialogue. So the second floor of the foundation as a series of gallery installations, and instead the third floor a very strict museum environment. So signalling to the viewer, this in itself is about the old and new and different ways of showing. People want to show not behind glass anymore, but the museum section is behind glass. Inside of it is like a history of museum presentation, as well as the history of Lanvin.
为爱女设计服装，使得让那浪凡开创了自己的时尚事业。母女双手相握的标志性徽标，代表了她对女儿玛格丽特非凡的母爱，同时也给予了让那浪凡潮流创新的动力，成为其灵感的源泉。
I think the whole exhibition is set up as dialogue. So we have bows, the codes, one of the codes in the archive, for example, explained in the exhibition as the juxtaposition between different garments. So you have an iconic gown like My Fair Lady with a huge bow, and you have Bruno's first catwalk collection outfit, which is actually for a man, but that also has a very obvious bow. And I think those juxtapositions say more than just here are two bows. Here is a tradition of couture that forms part of the archive, and here is a young designer who is playing not only with the code, so the bow, but with gender. He's designing menswear and women's wear, and so it's important for me that the bow is also on the man. That it embraces his attitude to design and to living, and to a kind of an attitude to fashion.
灵动飘逸的线条，惟妙惟肖的花卉、树木和动物的形象，在设计师画家拉托为让那浪凡巴黎住所餐厅设计的精美屏风上，融合装饰艺术的现代主义风格展露无遗，而这也正是后者设计风格的精华所在。
I think there's always the different demands of different dresses. Of course, there's a conservation demand. So if you're putting a dress that is very old next to a new one, they have different light levels that are required to conserve the historic textile. And so we were very careful in how we constructed the environment on the floor with a lot of contemporary garments to make sure we were safeguarding the historic pieces. And so we set them up as a series of cabinets that the contemporary mannequins were looking at. And so we're kind of enacting inspiration whilst protecting the historic garments. And so all the time you have all the the kind of conservation demands to satisfy alongside the creative desire.
时尚是人文的承载，经典是时尚的传承。卓尔不凡的底蕴能够跨越时空，给予当下的设计者们以不竭的创作灵感和全新演绎。
There's one plinth that perhaps explains some of the attitude of the exhibition, and it's a plinth that shows a cape from 1925. It's an exquisite cape that was in the original Art Deco exhibition. And it's shown exactly in the same way as it was shown in 1925. The chair is the same, the pose is the same, and it is the first time the actual cape has been displayed. So I think that was a very special moment for me, a sort of encounter in the archive, and so it was very important to pay tribute to it on the plinth where it's exhibited. And so I've given it its own cabinet, its own more historicized wig on the Bonaveri mannequin that was sculpted to its original pose. But then it was important to put with it a kind of contemporary take on it, as with all the plinths. And so I sat two girls dressed in Bruno Cialelli's collection, looking at the plinth. Bruno's girls are educated girls, they're girls who go to an exhibition, they're girls who are interested in the history of fashion. And so it tells a story in a way of a Lanvin wearer as well as the Lanvin archive. So I think what is incorporated all the time is, what is this new moment for Lanvin? What are our priorities? What do we do? And I think it's fun to enter into the imagination of the Lanvin girl who goes to an exhibition. So it's almost a story within a story, you know, of the girl who's coming to this exhibition is like the girl in the exhibition.
3楼如博物馆般的展厅，沉浸在标志性的蓝色海洋之中，展现了最珍贵的历史展品，同时也是礼服珍藏在中国的首次亮相。展览特别定制的低光照明系统与珠式的光泽相映成趣，展厅中的帷幔宛如流光，将时尚瞬息转换的寓意惟妙惟肖地呈现于观者面前。
I think that exhibitions are about showing. Exhibitions are a very particular medium because you see things in the round, you share the space with them. It's a very different experience to that of a screen, which is the experience we have most often during the day. So now I think an encounter with a historic dress is a very particular kind of encounter. And I think because so much craft is invested in Lanvin's garments, you notice a bead, you notice another bead, you notice the play of light on a piece of embroidery, you notice a drawing. And so I think exhibitions are always an invitation to look, and to look again, and to look carefully. I think because of the conditions. We're in a very different, but we're used to looking at fashion in shops. This is how we encounter fashion. But there is always another story. It's about buying something. Within an exhibition, that pressure in a way is removed for a moment to appreciate the object for what it is and for its references. And I think I enjoy that moment in a way of quiet with the object, where somebody is invited to look.
在策展人朱迪斯·克拉克看来，对于时尚瞬息万变的敏锐观察与对经典的创新演绎都是值得赞赏的。正如与布鲁诺的本次合作一样，在开创时尚潮流的过程中，沿途不断收获震慑人心的灵感火花。
I've worked with many design houses, mainly within their archive collection, but I've worked less closely with their designers. It's usually been a story that is a more historic story of a brand. I think because I met Bruno so early in his time at Lanvin, it feels as though we've been on this journey somehow together. We looked at the archive at the same moment, and that's been very special for me. Even though we haven't worked together in the same space, it's as though we're looking at something in parallel. And I think there's something about that in this exhibition that comes across. There's a kind of sympathy and respect that has also carried this project.
来自澳大利亚，成长于罗马，之后移居伦敦学习并生活。朱迪斯·克拉克的多元文化背景造就了他复合且创新的能力，并由此与策展这一领域逐渐同频共振。
I come from Australia, but I was raised in Rome and lived my entire childhood in Italy before moving to London to study architecture. So I think that my love of this work comes from studying as an architect, and I think that I still very much think as one. You know, I think in the round. I always sketch. I carry my sketchbook from those early studies in London. But I also, I think, maybe brought from Italy a passion for fashion. And so I wanted to do something that combined these two loves of mine. One, dress and dress history, and the other architects, and creating environments around fashion stories and fashion histories. And I think when I was in London, the job as I now do it didn't exist. You could go and work for a big museum, but people were not freelance fashion curators when I started. And I started doing this 20 years ago. So it's something that I've built up slowly and slowly as a very personal practice. I call myself an exhibition maker, and it's a strange term. It comes from installation art. And it's about creating exhibitions where every detail is taken into consideration. So you're creating a story made from objects, but also about the space between them, for example, like the great exhibitions of installation art. And so I borrowed this term to use as a new personal practice. I work as an academic as well. I'm a professor of fashion and museology in London. And so for me, it's very important to do a lot of research that underpins any exhibition. So every reference may not be in the caption, but it might be embedded in the plinth or something. It's about delegating different pieces of information to this art form, and that's why I call myself an exhibition maker. And it might be commissioning a wig, it might be asking Bonaveri to make a mannequin in a particular pose, it might be the decoration on the floor. I teach at London College of Fashion. We run a very specialised master's programme looking at fashion curation. And it's one of the very few courses in the world that specialises in this, so I do teach a young generation of curators, absolutely, and many from China. So I hope that some of our teaching will find its way back into this city after I've left the city next week. I think it's to come with an imagination and to recognise that it really is a specialised discipline, that it's not presenting a catwalk show and it's not making dress. It's a very particular form of history. It's a very particular form of recovery. And so our students come, sometimes they're writers, sometimes they're historians, sometimes they're They're fashion designers who felt that they always wanted to kind of immerse themselves in the references. And I think it's a rather magical new field that is still developing every day. The thing that I love about it is that every day I wake up excited to do my job and excited to teach my job.
什么在变？什么才能成为永恒？世界时尚的潮流在于对瞬息万变本真的敏锐洞察力，也在于用开拓创新精神所达成的卓越演绎。艺术家、音乐家、设计师和作家，各领域大师的广泛合作，世界民族文化所涌现的灵感，都推动着时尚文化的推陈出新，也让时装展示的观念产生了前所未见的开拓与革新。
Jean Lanvin was famous for her collaborations. She collaborated with very important writers, but also theatre directors. She was the president of the Chamber of Fashion that took fashion to New York for its expos. She had so many roles, and I think this is also reflected in the exhibition, because it was very important to have, you know, the best mannequin, the best wig maker, the best artisan crafting a plinth. The dialogue is embedded in the very material of the exhibition, that all of the references were made by the best artisan as well. And so I think it's important to kind of illustrate different aspects of her work within the exhibition and its catalogue.
好，以上就是今天节目的全部内容，非常感谢各位的收看，让我们下一次再见。
下期您将收看的是意大利零重力舞蹈团新作《达芬奇》亮相中国上海国际艺术节，艺术、科技、哲学成就魔幻奇观，向文艺复兴大师致敬。